Happy Friday, everybody. It's Dave Cumbo, and today I've got a video that's going to focus on the construction of illustrations for Dreamside. As you can see on my screen here, I've got an image that I completed recently. This is an updated image from the previous pass that I released in the video books from last year. So what I'm going to do today is take you through the steps that I go through to construct an image like this. This is going to be a very simple, short video, and I consider this to be a little bit probably for more intermediate digital painters, people who already have some sort of a grasp of how to construct the figure, how to actually draw. And what I'm going to do today instead is focusing on the drawing aspects, is focus on the construction, the technical makeup of each image, the steps that I go through in order. So I actually go through quite a few sort of sub-steps to get to this result. But for the sake of simplicity in an explanation, I've broken it down into 6 main steps. And what I'm going to do is just take you through those. And then in the future, I plan to upload videos that will focus on the construction of each one of those elements. And it will, I think, help better explain how they're actually broken up. But for those of you who want to just take a look at how the images are made up, I think this video will be particularly useful for you. Okay, so I'm going to move over to another file here, and I'm going to take you through these 6 steps. Okay, so the first thing that I do when I draw an image, provided I have a sketch that's close to what I want, is work the outline out. Now, of course, I'm just showing you the outline here, but in general, this goes through a series of roughs, probably 1 or 2 thumbnails to try and get the design that I want before I solidify the outline. And once again, as I said, I can go through and elaborate how I transition a rough into an outline. But I'm going to assume that most intermediate digital artists already know how to do that. So once I have an outline, and of course this is going to be on its own layer so that I can make sure that I have transparency so I can see below it. Because all the other color layers that I work with tend to go below the line art, so I need to make sure that I can see through and be able to paint below. After I do that, I do what's called the flats. Okay, so flat colors, basically. I come in and I understand what the standard colors are for my characters. Now, I'm a little bit less organized about this than I probably should be. I don't actually have like a specific color library for characters, and part of the reason for that is because I use colors in a what I consider to be a sort of on an emotional basis. I want to be able to affect the audience's mood based on the colors that I use. And I don't like to just do that in a post-production. I like to do that when I'm putting the base colors down. So sometimes I will pick colors that are a little bit different from the ones that I used for the same character, even on just the previous panel or page, simply because I want to get a different effect. So the purpose of the flats is to basically opaque the characters. This is a traditional animation logic where you have a background, say, and you have characters in front of it. You want to lay down an opaque color that will help separate it from the background and provide a foundation for the additional layers that I'm going to add. Okay, once I've got the flats in, and you understand the concept with the flats here is that there is no depiction of lighting. Now, many people I see work with flats in really cool ways in their final images. Sometimes, especially if they're trying to get an effect like an old school traditional animation, sometimes people will intentionally leave the colors flat, and that's a really cool style. And it's certainly much faster than going through the steps that I'm going to show you after this point. What I do next is I determine a light source, just one light source, okay? I figure out where that's going to be. And then I draw in my shadows, so that looks like this. Okay, so I've determined that I want a light source to be shining down from the upper right to the lower left. And it's sort of coming just ever so slightly from the front. Okay, and once again, you have to understand three-dimensional shapes and perspective in order to understand how to paint shadows. And that's definitely not just one, but probably quite a few lessons to be able to explain that to beginner artists. But provided you have some sort of grasp on drawing digitally, you probably already understand how to construct shadows. So I do that on a separate layer, and that way they can be edited and adjusted separately from the flat color, and that makes it easier for me to make adjustments if needed. Okay, so this is another step that I don't see quite as often because this is one of those kind of extra difficult steps that just requires a lot of tedious work sometimes, and that is light bounce. Okay, and so essentially it's a secondary light source, so I'll turn that on now, and you can see the difference. It's kind of subtle, but what's happening here is this is a secondary light source, so it could be as literal as another light that's shining on the characters from a different angle than the main light source. Or it could be something else, like the phenomenon of light bouncing, where due to the fact in this image, you can see that they're sitting on top of this mattress that has a pretty light value. Okay, and because of that, and because the light is being depicted as being rather bright that's shining down on them, it's reflecting off the surface of the bed, and it's shining back up onto them. Okay, and so it creates the impression of a secondary light source. So even though they're out in, they're flying through the sky and the only light source is the sun, there is a lot of ambient light, sort of secondary light, that is projecting back up onto them. And that is not only, I think, important in terms of understanding how to construct a realistic image that has a sense of atmosphere to it, but it's also a great way to add more drama to your illustrations. The bounced light, for example, could be a dramatically different color than the main light source, and it's a cool way to add some very theatrical drama to your pieces, to be able to add in additional colors in a logical way, so you can have a consistent light source. Okay, so the next step is what I call color bleed. And so this is something that I learned working in CG graphics back in college. It comes from this concept called radiosity, which is essentially transitioning colors from surfaces onto other colors based on the way the light rays bounce between them. Okay, so before I turn it on here, let me just sort of explain the concept. So I have these two girls with their heads pretty close together, and you'll notice that the dream girl, so she has kind of bronze colored skin, and her hair is pretty intense red and purple here. And it's next to Sarah, whose skin is relatively pale. Okay, and so what's going to happen is when the light, especially a very bright light source, shines down and it hits the dream girl's face here, it's going to bounce back up onto Sarah's face on the underside, and we're going to get that light bounce effect. But something else is going to happen as well. It's not just going to bounce light back up onto it. It's also going to take some of the color of the surface that it bounced off of, and it's going to project that up onto Sarah's face. The same thing's going to happen with basically every other surface that's adjacent to another surface. So because of this, it's a very complex process, and it takes some time to really figure it out. Now, I used to do this process along with the light bounce process. The problem is that it started to become very cumbersome to not only figure out the sort of perspective breakdown of the bounced secondary light, as well as considering the color that it would take with it. So I separated those two into two different categories. And so it's now this color bleed. Okay, now the color bleed process is probably the one that gives my images the really sort of vivid, intense colors that people tend to respond to. I think it's one of the things that really makes a big difference in separating the images. You have to really understand the shapes of your figures, just as you do when you paint shadows and color bounce. But one of the benefits of color bleed is that it really gives the images a sense of illumination. It really makes them feel alive. And by knowing what you're doing in this process, it can really help. And so, of course, there's a lot of learning to do with that and explaining how that works, just as there is with every other one of these steps. So I'll probably be addressing that in a video in the future and break it down into steps so that you can follow along with how it's done. Okay, and then the final process, and this is very difficult to explain really, is this is the details and effects pass. And so I'll do anything within this pass. And once again, I said earlier that I have a lot of sub-steps. Well, the details and effects pass is probably the broken up with the majority of these sub-steps. There's a lot of changes that I'll make. For example, you can see just little tiny subtle details. Like if I zoom in on her eyebrow here, you can see that, well, I kind of didn't paint very well in there, and so I'll just do a fix. But I also am going to paint it a little bit darker. So I do this on layers on top of the original layers that I do, because I want to sort of keep them separate. You'll notice also that I added some light onto the Dream Girl's hair here compared to where it was before. And I add all these little sparkly effects. There's a little sparkle on Sarah's tooth. You can see on Sarah's face there is some shine marks here on her eyelids. And I'm considering all sorts of things as I do this, like, you know, the sort of texture of what the surface is, because Sarah's eyelids, and if you look at your eyelids and you were to, well, I guess you'll have to keep one open, won't you? But if you close one eyelid and shine a light on it, you'll see that it tends to get this sort of little shine mark on it. And that's because your skin actually has oil in it, which is, it's got some degree of moisture to it. And so you want to indicate that in a way that's a little bit different from, say, the fabrics that are on their shirts. So that is basically a really quick breakdown of my process for constructing Dreamside images. So I really hope that this one is particularly useful. And you know, I've been getting a lot of questions about this over the past year or so. If people want to know, I guess, how the images are broken down. So this is a chance to take a peek behind the curtain of how these pieces are constructed. Once again, as I said, probably over the course of the next few weeks, I don't know if I'm going to stay consistent with it every week or if I might deviate into some different direction for the videos, but I intend to show you how you can apply these in a very simplistic way, and I'll probably begin with a very simplistic sort of sphere, you know, over ground plane sort of breakdown of the steps, and demonstrate how you do it with a very simplistic object before you try and apply it to an object that is very complex, like the human figure, as I have here. All right, so as always, follow me on social media. You can subscribe, of course, to my YouTube account for plenty more videos like this that will be coming in the future, and you can follow along with my progress on Dreamside as I show you through these videos. Of course, on my website, which is really the best way to get any sort of insider news in terms of when Dreamside is taking its next steps, as well as any announcements for future projects. So make sure to go to dmcumbo.com and hit that subscribe button and add your email to my email list. If you have any questions about this process, of course, like I said, I will be breaking this down in the future, but if you have any questions about anything that I've shown you here today, please feel free to leave them in the comment section below, and I will address them either directly to you or in a future video. So thank you again for watching, as always, and we will see you next week.